On a Saturday afternoon in late February of 2026, an Iranian drone slipped past the air defenses of one of the most heavily protected coastlines in the world. It struck the forecourt of the Fairmont Palm Hotel in Dubai, a five-star resort on the artificial island that had come to symbolize the wealth and ambition of the United Arab Emirates. 4 people were injured. A guest later described hearing what sounded like a jet engine, then a flash, then silence. That drone did something far more important than damage a luxury hotel. It revealed a secret hiding in plain sight. Iran and the United Arab Emirates were both members of the same supposed alliance. The bloc, known as BRICS, presented to the world as the rising counterweight to American power, the foundation of a new multipolar order. And here was one member firing missiles at another on the very first day of the war. The official story is that this was a tragic accident of geopolitics. The truth is something else entirely. The collapse of BRICS was not a surprise. It was not an accident. It was, in the eyes of more than one government, the entire point. To understand what happened in that hotel courtyard, you have to go back to 2024. That was the year BRICS, the alliance originally formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, opened its doors. In came Iran. In came the United Arab Emirates. In came Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Indonesia. In a single stroke, the bloc nearly doubled in size. It now claimed to represent 45% of the world's population and roughly 36% of global economic output. The press releases were triumphant. Russia called it the birth of a new world order. China spoke of finally breaking the dominance of the dollar. The leaders of the global south said they were no longer going to be lectured by Washington. For viewers watching the news that autumn, it looked like history pivoting on its hinge. But behind the smiling photographs, something darker was happening. 3 of the 5 founding members, Brazil, India, and South Africa, had quietly opposed the expansion. They warned that bringing in too many countries, too quickly, with too many conflicting agendas, would dilute the bloc into uselessness. China and Russia overruled them. Beijing wanted the oil producers. Moscow wanted the diplomatic cover. Both wanted size for its own sake. The bigger the bloc, the more impressive the headline. What nobody mentioned, at least not in public, was the obvious problem sitting at the table. Iran and the United Arab Emirates were not merely different countries. They were strategic enemies. Iran had defined itself in opposition to the United States since the revolution of 1979. The Emirates had defined itself as one of America's closest allies in the region. It hosted United States military bases. It bought American weapons. And in 2020, it signed the Abraham Accords with Israel. Saudi Arabia carried the same contradictions. So did Egypt. You do not put cats and dogs in the same room and call it a kennel club. You do not put Iran and the Emirates in the same alliance and call it a counterweight to anything. Unless, of course, you want the alliance to fail. For a while, the contradictions stayed buried under polite communiques and group photographs. Then, in January of 2026, the cracks began to show. South Africa hosted joint naval drills off the coast of Cape Town under the banner of BRICS cooperation. China sent a destroyer, so did Iran. Russia sent a corvette. The United Arab Emirates sent one too. The image was striking. Iranian and Emirati warships sharing a harbour, pretending to be partners. And India. India did not show up. New Delhi, which holds the chair of BRICS this year, issued a cold statement, clarifying that the exercise was not, in its view, an official BRICS activity. Brazil came only as an observer. The cracks were no longer cracks, they were canyons. What was happening behind the scenes was even more revealing. India was under enormous pressure from Washington. President Donald Trump, returned to the White House and aggressive as ever, had imposed a 50% tariff on Indian goods. It was the highest tariff rate applied to any country in the world. The message was unmistakable. Choose your friends carefully. India chose. On the 25th and 26th of February, just days before the war, Prime Minister Narendra Modi flew to Jerusalem. He addressed the Israeli parliament. He told the chamber that India stood with Israel firmly in this moment and beyond. He signed defense agreements covering weapons and artificial intelligence. Israel, it should be remembered, supplies roughly 40% of its arms exports to India. The two countries are not casual partners. They are deeply intertwined. 48 hours later, the United States and Israel launched their coordinated strike on Iran. The campaign was called Operation Epic Fury. Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed within hours. So were more than 550 other Iranians, including over 160 children. Iran, decapitated and humiliated, fired back the only way it could. Thousands of missiles and drones aimed at every American base, every Gulf monarchy, every symbol of Western alignment within reach. Iran's missiles landed in Bahrain, they landed in Kuwait, they landed in Qatar, in Oman, in Saudi Arabia, and above all, they landed in the United Arab Emirates. Over the following weeks, the Emirates intercepted more than 500 ballistic missiles and over 2,000 drones. Some got through. The fuel tanks at Dubai International Airport caught fire. The Burj Al Arab, perhaps the most famous hotel in the Arab world, took shrapnel. The Jebel Ali port, the busiest port in the Middle East, burned. For the first time in modern history, Iran was openly and directly attacking every single country of the Gulf Cooperation Council. And two of those countries, the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, were sitting in the same alliance as Iran. The bloc that was supposed to defend the Global South was now watching its own members try to kill each other. So what did BRICS do? Nothing. 12 days passed. No joint statement. 20 days passed. Still nothing. A month passed. The bloc that had condemned the much smaller Israeli strikes on Iran in June of 2025, within hours, with a unified communique, could not now produce a single sentence on which all members would agree. India, holding the chair, simply let the silence grow. The lines of fracture were perfectly visible. Russia and China condemned the American and Israeli attack. Brazil joined them. India focused its public comments narrowly on protecting Indian shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The Emirates condemned Iran. Egypt and Indonesia leaned toward criticizing the Iranian retaliation. South Africa tried to stand on principle without naming anyone, and ended up sounding like it was reading from a legal textbook. Trump, watching from the White House, reportedly told aides that if BRICS countries ever truly tried to unify, it would be over quickly. He was being proven right in real time. Now ask yourself the question that almost no analyst is asking out loud. A bloc that includes the world's largest exporter of revolutionary Islamism, alongside the world's most enthusiastic Arab partner of Israel. Was that ever a serious attempt at unity? Or was it something else entirely? Consider what the expansion actually accomplished. It gave China and Russia a public relations victory in 2024. But it also handed Washington an extraordinary gift. Every internal contradiction within BRICS now became a lever the United States could pull. Tariffs on India, defense deals with the Emirates, weapon sales to Saudi Arabia, sanctions threats on South Africa, trade pressure on Brazil. Each member could be peeled away individually because the bloc itself had no mechanism for collective defense. The pattern is older than BRICS. The British Empire perfected it in India and the Middle East. Bring rivals into the same room, encourage them to depend on you as the referee, then walk away when the room catches fire. The French used the same playbook in West Africa. The United States has used it in Latin America for over a century. The technique has a name in diplomatic circles. It is called divide and rule, and it does not always require an active conspirator. Sometimes you simply let your enemies invite their enemies to dinner, and you let the dinner do the work. Whether by design or by miscalculation, the result is the same. BRICS. Today is not a counterweight to the West. It is a museum of the contradictions inside the global South, and those contradictions are now killing people. What happens next will determine whether the multipolar world that so many predicted ever actually arrives. There are 3 scenarios worth watching. In the first, Iran emerges from this war broken, its leadership scattered, its economy in ruins, its government replaced by something more acceptable to Washington. BRICS quietly drops Iran from the membership list, the contradictions ease, and the Bloc returns to issuing communiques about development banks and the dollar. The alliance survives, but only as a discussion club. In the second scenario, the war drags on. Iran keeps firing into the Gulf. The Emirates and Saudi Arabia formally pull back from BRICS, perhaps not leaving outright, but signaling that they no longer take the Bloc seriously. The alliance shrinks back toward its original 5 members. The dream of a unified global South dies quietly, replaced by a tangle of bilateral deals between countries that no longer trust any larger framework. In the third scenario, the one the conspiracy-minded already suspect, what we are watching is a coordinated dismantling. The expansion was the trap. The war was the trigger. The fracturing is the result. And the next phase will be the slow absorption of the Gulf monarchies, of India, and perhaps eventually even of South Africa. They will be folded into a new American-led economic architecture, one that makes BRICS look like a quaint experiment from a more naive decade. Whichever scenario you find most plausible, one fact is now beyond dispute. The bloc that was supposed to challenge the dollar, replace the World Bank, and break the grip of Washington on the global system, cannot even agree on a press release while 2 of its own members shoot at each other. The question is no longer whether BRICS is falling apart. The question is who, in the end, profits from the wreckage. And the answer to that question may already be sitting in the Oval Office, smiling